Hello everyone. Today I want to show a game played in 2009 in Amsterdam between Alexander Beliavsky and Hikaru Nakamura. Beliavsky starts with d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3 and bishop g7. The King's Indian is on the board. e4, d6, knight f3, castles, bishop e2, e5, white castles and knight c6. Standard mainline moves: d5, knight e7, knight d2, knight e8, b4 and f5. We'll see that white will play on the queen side and black will play on the king side. All typical stuff in the King's Indian defense. c5, knight f6, f3 defending f4, e4, f4 by black, knight to c4, g5, a4, knight g6, bishop a3. It potentially is going to put a lot of pressure on the d6 square and maybe create a passed pawn in some lines. And it does again seem that both players are ignoring each other, which is all quite typical. Rook f7 here, just getting out of the way of the bishop and potentially defending along the 7th rank. e5 even. Here the best would be to actually play bishop f8 to counter the potentially strong bishop of white. Let's say b5, e to c5 and bishop b2, putting pressure potentially on the e5 pawn. So black would have to go knight e8 to bring the queen to f6. That's a knight a4 now, clearing the bishop's attack on the e5 pawn and queen f6. This would be balanced, and later on the c5 pawn will be captured. There would be, let's say, b6 would be an idea, and this would be balanced. But after a5, Hikaru Nakamura played h5. He's ignoring what white is doing and he's going for his own attack, but there are limits to how long you can do that. b5 immediately. D takes c5, and while you could capture with the bishop and then allow g4, this is fine for white. Even better is knight a4, and after g4 you capture with knight c5. This is slightly stronger as well. The bishop can tuck back to b2 and put pressure on e5. That's an idea always. But after d takes c5, b6 was played, which is also fair. And here it was important to play c takes b6, a takes b6, and then g4. And after bishop takes c5, you can play a6. This would be slightly better for white, but black is still okay here. However, Nakamura played g4 immediately here. And this is slightly different because it allows bishop b into c7, rook into c7, and knight b5. This comes with a tempo. And here Hikaru Nakamura played g3 even. He's giving up the exchange for the moment. Otherwise d6 could be quite strong, queen b3 could be quite strong. Those options are also there in the position. Knight into c7, and we don't capture back immediately, because if queen c7, then first queen b3, looking to x-ray the black king. So king h8 and then d6. This is very good for white. That pawn is very strong, and bishop into c5 can come at any moment. The rooks can be mobilized, and that d pawn will be a bone in black's throat. So knight into e4 was played instead. We don't go for that knight immediately, and we are creating some threats of our own with queen h4 possibly. And the best bet here is to actually capture the knight on e4, allow queen h4 and h3, bishop into h3, g into h3, queen into h3, and there's a move which saves white, which is rook f2. White already had a lot of material for a few pawns, so you just give back a rook and you'll have two minor pieces for a few pawns, which is more than enough compensation for white, and white should go on to win the game later on. This would have been best for Beliavsky, but he played knight e6 here. bishop into e6, d into e6, g into h2, king into h2, and this allows queen h4 with check. And this is so different that black's pieces are so active. There's still the knight on e4, and the knight on e4 is a lot better than having a bishop on c8. We can say that. King g1 here, and knight g3. So black has some pressure, no doubt about that. Bishop takes e5, e4 even, trying to get e3 in to cage white in. Rook a4. So you will simply have knight into e3 if e3 is pushed now. Rook c8 first, hitting the bishop. And Beliavsky captured the pawn, which is a mistake. b5 is allowed because of that. And it forks two pieces, and there is no a into b6 because bishop d4 will end the game on the spot. So after b5, rook b4 had to be played, and this sacrifices a piece for no reason. B takes e4, bishop takes e4, queen h1 check. King f2, only move, e3 even. And this forces essentially bishop into e3, f into e3, king into e3, and knight into f1 with check. Bishop into f1, queen g1 check. And believe it or not, here Beliavsky resigned because there is no decent continuation for white here. If king e2 or king e4, in both cases it's very similar. Rook c3 is going to come, putting pressure on the e3 square. Queen d8, king h7, queen g5, controlling e3, but then rook c5 hits the queen, and there's no decent defense against queen into f1. And white would be down too much material to continue the game. That's why Beliavsky resigned this game. A very nice victory for Hikaru Nakamura. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you soon for the next game.